Welcome, everybody. I just might wait a couple of minutes to see that everybody is coming on. And it's so nice of you to join me on this lovely day. Well, here where I am, it's just drizzling and raining, and that's why I'm a bit in the dark. There's not all that much light coming through the window right now. And I want to welcome you and thanks for joining me. In this session, I want to talk about EFT. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with EFT. These days, so many more people know about it. I'm sure most of you might have heard about this tapping business that can help to calm things. When I started EFT, it was more like, it came across as a woo-woo kind of practice, because not many people heard about it, and I certainly was skeptical about it too, but I'll get into that a little bit more. So if you are a practiced EFT person and tapper, then I hope you get some fun out of this as well and join me in the tapping. And that's what I encourage you to do too. I'd really like you to participate in the tapping so that you can experience what that calming effect feels like. While we wait, what you might want to do is wash your hands, because we will be tapping on our face, and so that we can keep all the germs away. And that's what's recommended at these times. So I'll wait for you for a minute to do that, and then we'll get into the session. Now, in this session, what I'll be covering is, I want to talk about EFT in relation to anxiety. And in these times, we certainly had a lot of it. Like I come across many people that are dealing with anxiety at the moment, that uncertainty of what's going on with that virus going around. Now that things are going back again, kids start school again. Is it safe? Is it not? All those questions, and not being sure of what's going on really. So that can cause a lot of anxiety. So I want to let you know how we can use EFT for that. And I also want to talk about what happens in our brain with anxiety. Now, I won't make it a scientific lecture. I want to make it really easy to understand, because once we understand what goes on in the brain, what I found, it certainly helped me and many of my clients, is once we know what happens in the brain when we're anxious, it has already a calming effect. It can bring our worry mind at ease. And then with the EFT tool on top, with the tapping, we can help it to calm the whole nervous system. So I'm hoping that everyone's on board now, and we're all ready to go with clean hands. Now, I'll also show you a tapping sequence about breathing. And this tapping sequence was actually used by a person that had a coronavirus. He was on that cruise ship that where they had so many cases of coronavirus, and he used that sequence, and I'd like to share that with you as well. It's also a very good grounding tool. That's why I want to use it too. So if you have any questions, I'll invite you can put them in the chat box. But also in the end, if I don't get to your question, or you might think of one at the end or after the session is finished, which frequently happens to me, you can always email me and let me know what that question is, because I'd love to hear from you. It shows me that you're interested, and I love talking about this topic, but also it can help me to add things that people want to know in future presentations. All right. So let me introduce myself. I'm Christine Martin. I'm a counselor and EFT practitioner. I've been practicing EFT now for over 10 years, and it is my total favorite tool. And I'm a mother of two. I'm a grandmother of 5. I work one-on-one with adults as well as children, face-to-face, but at the moment online, and other times as well for people that are not local to Newcastle in Australia I am. And I also facilitate programs like the coming home to self. I co-facilitate that with other practitioners. I have a EFT meetup group that I also facilitate for people that are interested in EFT or want to practice. And I am part of the collaborative health team at the Newcastle Health Collective, as well as a specialist practitioner in the human well-being services. And my other love is being in primary schools. I'm part-time in primary schools, where I also share my tool of EFT with children, which really benefits them lots. So what is EFT? EFT is sometimes called psychological acupuncture without needles, because we tap on acupressure points that calm our nervous system. We bring an issue into focus, and by tapping on these points, it can calm our whole system down and bring the cortisol levels down. Research has shown that stress hormone is reduced by tapping on these points. Now, the benefits of EFT, there is a huge list of things. Let me have a look so I don't forget any. It can be helpful for anxiety, that's what we're covering here. For depression, it can be for fears and phobias. It's been really very successful. Physical pain, emotional pain, post-traumatic stress symptoms. In the US, they use it for returned soldiers as an evidence-based treatment for it. You can use it for food cravings or addictions, for grief. It can help you with performance. Lots of athletes use it. It can be used for fear of public speaking, and that was one of the ones that I used it when I started with EFT. Now, when I read all the list and heard about it before, when I first started with EFT, I was very skeptical. How can this tapping business help so many things? And I was a bit dubious about it also. And I think people can relate to that do tapping, that when we start, we might feel a bit self-conscious. We might do it in front of people and stand here and do this tapping business. I know when I started, I did it behind closed doors and was sure nobody would see me or hear me. But these days it's getting so much more common. And for me now, I want to do it in public and let as many people know as I can, because I certainly experienced those benefits personally, as well as for my clients. And this is why I'm so passionate about it. I want to shout it off the rooftop to everyone. So I want to begin straight away with tapping. And I want us to do one on our breathing. Because what happens with our breath, often we unconsciously have a very shallow breath. And as we know, the deeper we breathe, the calmer we are, and the better it is for our whole well-being. The technique that I'm going to show you was also used by a man. I saw that on social media. He put that on social media. He was one of the people that was on that cruise ship, like I said, with all those coronavirus cases. And he was in intensive care. And he said that he remembered a video, because there's so many things online about EFT. and lots of videos that you can tap along to, which he did one day. One day he came across a video from Gary Craig, the founder of EFT, who did a tapping sequence on restricted breath, on the breathing that we're going to do in a minute. And he thought that might be a good one to do because he had trouble breathing with that coronavirus. He was in hospital and they were thinking of putting him on the ventilator, and he certainly wanted to prevent that. And he did with tapping, with this tapping sequence. And I want to use it here. It's one of the first exercises that you learn in EFT. And it's a really beautiful one to have in your toolbox because it's such a grounding thing. So whenever something feels overwhelming and you're in that anxious state, coming back to breath and tapping at the same time can be a really powerful tool. Okay, so if you're ready, I invite you to tap along with me. So the first step in tapping is we tune into it, into the issue that we want to address. And at the moment, that is our breath. So I invite you just to breathe normally and take notice of how that breath is. So if you want to give it a percentage, if 100% is a really full breath and 0 would be no breath, I hope none of you have 0 because otherwise I'll have to ring the ambulance. So just tune into it. How is your breath right now? So just breathe in about 3 times and just tune in of where your breath is right now. Without changing it, just notice where it is. Okay. And then if you've got that percentage, that's our baseline. So we know where we start from. So let's go through the points. So the first one is here, which is called the karate chop, or the side of your hand. So where your little finger is. And we tap with 2 fingers on each point. They say about 7 times, but no need to count. You can do it on either side. And you tap hard enough to feel it, but not as hard as to bruise yourself. And here on the setup statement, we say what the issue is, and we frame it with another positive statement as well. Then the next point is here where the eyebrow starts. You can do, like I said, one side or the other, or you can, some people do even both. Then at the side of your eye, so not on the temple, but more on the bony part. The next point is under your eye. So underneath your pupil, also on that bony part, under your nose, here in that crease of your chin. And they call this one the collarbone, but the collarbone is up here. So you go down and out a bit. There's a little dint that you can feel. You can tap in here. And the next one is under your arm, about where women would have their bra strap. And on top of the head. Great. So you remember your breathing, and we're just going to, the beauty with EFT too is we tune into what's going on in our body and we say those things out loud. We let it out of our system. So here we go. And I'm guessing, well, for me, my breath is somewhat restricted. So that's what I'm going to say, and just say it along with me. Even though I have this restricted breath, I accept myself anyway. Even though I have this restricted breath, I accept myself anyway. Even though I have this restricted breath, I accept the way it is. This restricted breath. 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 Under your arm, this restricted breath. And on top of your head, this restricted breath. And that's one round of tapping. And then we tune back into it again and just notice what you notice. Has it changed at all? What do you notice? Has your breathing changed? Is it the same? Is it less? Is it more? What about your whole body? Do you feel more calm? Just notice what you notice. And if your breath is still very restricted and you'd like to increase it some more, you just keep on tapping that same sequence and you repeat that sequence until you get a more fuller breath and you feel that real calm inside. So this is how EFT works. Thank you for joining in and being part of this as well. So you can use that for anxiety as well, because it can be really calming and grounding. So what is anxiety? Now, there is a definition here that says anxiety is a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease about something with an uncertain outcome. And when we look at these times at the moment, I think it's only normal and natural that there is some anxiety about. So it's about an uncertain outcome. Now, I'm sure you can come up with some anxieties too, not just with what's happening right now. We can be anxious with all sorts of things. So just think of what sort of situations have you had where you felt nervous and uneasy with something where you weren't quite sure what the outcome would be. And the interesting thing is that our worry brain thinks of the worst case scenarios most of the time, and we'll get into that in a minute. Now, it might be, you might remember when you went for a job interview where you might have had that feeling. Or for me, sometimes it's when I drive in a big city and unfamiliar places where I haven't been and there's lots of traffic that can sometimes get me there. When I run late to important meetings, you can have that feeling of nervousness or anxiety. Or before exams, or running races, or when you have to perform and people are watching what you're doing and looking over your shoulder to see if you're doing the job okay. Public speaking is a very common one for people where anxiety can come up. And it did certainly happen to me. Now, I was working at the school at the time, and that's many years ago. And I ran a program for children, and I invited the parents and wanted to give them some information about this program. And I'm very confident with working with groups of kids. I'm very confident with talking to parents, and I knew most of those parents. The principal came in for that information session as well. And let me tell you, before I started this presentation, I had a slideshow and I had all these physical symptoms coming on. I had sweaty palms, my heart started to pound. My throat was tight as anything. I didn't think I could speak, and I was in a total tiz. And I'm so grateful that I had EFT as my tool. I went to the bathroom, and that was about 5 or 10 minutes before the presentation was about to start. And I've never experienced a physical reaction like this ever before. And my heart was pounding so hard that the first thought that came into my mind was, I might have a heart attack like my dad. He passed away from his heart problems. So I thought, what, this could happen to me. So I quickly started tapping, even though my heart is pounding so hard and I'm worried about this presentation. And I tapped a few rounds. And after those few rounds, all those physical symptoms really calmed down. I could still feel it, but not to that extent where I thought my heart was going to jump out of my chest. And I was able to give that presentation. And even though I felt nervous inside, nobody seemed to notice. The principal said how well that presentation went. So, yes, we can have all sorts of reactions when we have that anxiety. And it's good to notice with what's going on in your body when we're worried or nervous, and tune into what's going on. So you could feel it, those butterflies in your stomach kind of feeling, or those sweaty palms. Some people might get the shakes, or like that pounding of the heart, or short breath. And yeah, many different symptoms. So what happens in our brain when this anxiety is going on? There are the parts of the brain that I want to talk about are 3 parts. There's many more parts that we have. There is the reptilian brain that comes from the stem. It's the oldest part of our brain, and it looks out for danger. It's really aware of what's going on. And we brought our brain with us, of course, from ancient times. And that reptilian brain was very active when our ancestors used to live in the caves, because there were many life-threatening situations. There was dangerous animals about, and they had to look out. So whenever they heard something, that brain part looked out for that danger. And then it would ring the alarm bells, which is the amygdala in our midbrain. And that's our fight and flight response. You would have heard about that one. And when that happens, our frontal lobe, our thinking brain that's normally wrapped around like this, and they communicate beautifully. When they communicate beautifully, we can think, we can problem solve, and we can deal with that situation in a rational way. But when we're in life-threatening danger and those alarm bells are ringing, then what Daniel Siegel describes it as, we flip the lid. Our frontal lobe is not connected anymore, and we're in that fight and flight mode, in that emotional state that runs the show. And there is no problem-solving skills happening at all, because we can't. The body reacts in a way where it takes the blood out of our brain and out of our organs too. It shuts down all the other organs, because we don't have to be busy with digestion and all these other things the organs are busy with. It wants to get all the energy into the end parts of our limbs, so that we can run as fast as we can, or we can fight as hard as we can to survive. Our brain, our body is made to survive. So really, it's doing a fantastic job. It keeps us alive. We're here because of it. Our ancestors survived because they had this mechanism, and we still have it. Now, our brains haven't evolved as fast as our society has. And nowadays, our amygdala gets fired with things that we perceive as danger. So that nervous unease, where we think there might be where there's an uncertain outcome, where our worry brain says, What if the worst thing happens? And it wants to keep us safe. So we're in that stress mode. And that clear thinking is switched off. It's hijacked. We flip the lid. So to calm that amygdala, EFT is the most successful tool for that. Research has shown that those cortisol levels that get triggered by that fight and flight response is calmed down. It lowers that cortisol level. And with a calm body and mind, we can stay healthier, we can respond rather than react, and life can be so much more easy. And it's what I love about EFT is we have it at our fingertips. And understanding this process of what's going on, we can ask ourselves, am I really in a life-threatening situation? Now, don't get me wrong, we need this still today. I heard of a woman whose son was trapped under a car, and she was able, within that fight and flight mode, with having that strength in her body, she was able to lift that car long enough for her son to be rescued. So thank goodness for our beautiful body and our brain that made it able for her to save her son. But most of the times there is things going on in our mind that thinks there is something happening. And that's because whatever we experience in our life is stored in our hippocampus, in our memory bank. And for a good reason, because our body then subconsciously can go back to that and go, oh, we experienced something which was dangerous or had a not so good outcome. Like with the public speaking, I remembered a time that I was at school and had to read in front of the whole class the assignment that I did. And I remembered that same kind of feeling. So we have past experiences that our brain remembers. And then whenever we're in a similar situation, we get triggered like that. And we're in that fight and flight mode. The interesting thing too was for me with this coronavirus that's going on, I had an interesting thing happening. I got caught up in that collective anxiety with with what's going on with everyone else around me, that it was unsure of what was going on. And this uncertainty really got me too. I sort of turned off the social media so that I wouldn't be as affected anymore. But I could still feel it. And what came out of it, because with EFT tapping, you can also get to those memories fairly easily. And what turned out was that I had an experience when I was 5 years old where my parents had to sell their business, and there was financial uncertainty. And, you know, as kids, it wasn't my problem, but I must have picked up on what was going on for my parents. They had to close down the business, and we moved to a different country. We moved to Austria. So my dad left earlier to find a new job, and we followed him and we moved to Austria. And my grandmother stayed behind in Germany. And that affected me greatly too, because I missed my grandma. And I felt isolated and I couldn't see her. So you can see the relation. Subconsciously that was going on, but with the EFT and with other modalities, you can bring those memories to the surface. And once you do, you get a greater understanding by calming that feeling that I had as a child, that uncertainty and that not knowing what's going to happen and not being able to see my grandma. All those feelings I could feel them as if they were happening today. So when you use EFT tapping on those memories, you can actually calm down those emotions, which means that the meaning in your memory bank has changed. And that also means that your amygdala doesn't get fired like that anymore, because it doesn't perceive it as dangerous anymore. And what I came away with was, because now I could bring in my frontal lobe and my thinking, I came away with knowing that I made it through. I was grateful for the experiences that I had, because what I had in Austria and all those experiences over there was just wonderful. And it also reminded me of my grandmother, what she went through during the war and has lost everything, how she must have gone through this process too. And I remembered all those stories that I was told. So it made me actually feel resilient and strong. And from then on, I wasn't affected by what was going on around me with what's happening right now. I had this inner calm and this knowing everything will be okay. So I just love EFT for that. But I know that it affects a lot of people. And I'd like you to tune into that right now, and we can do a round of tapping for that anxiety, if you like. So I invite you again to tune in. What's been happening for you? And the more you can tune into a particular event, so it mightn't have to do anything with this. You might be able to, you might think of another time, maybe with public speaking, or another event that you had that caused you anxiety. And you can think of that if you like. And we tune into it again when that event happened. And the more specific we can be with the event, the more successful you will be with EFT. Because if we just tap on the global anxiety, even though I feel anxious, the body doesn't know which part to calm down, because we've got lots of different memories of anxieties. So it's much more beneficial when you can tune into a specific thing that you're anxious about. So I invite you to do that right now. So like I said, it might be the anxiety that's going on at the moment with what's happening. Or it might be an event that you had where you felt pretty anxious. And I want you to tune into where in your body can you feel that? When you think of that time where you had felt anxious, where in your body do you feel it? You might want to close your eyes for that and really notice what you notice. Where is it? What does that feeling look like? Has it got a color? If it had a color, what color would it be? Has it got a shape? A texture? Is it heavy or light? Just tune into it so that you know what it feels like right now. And then if you could rate it, how strong is that feeling right now? If 10 was as bad as it can get, or as strong as it could be, and 0, that feeling is not there at all, how big is that feeling for you right now? And again, this is our baseline. And if you've got that, you can open your eyes again. Now, because we're in a group here, and I'm not sure what you're exactly tapping on, I will just say this anxious feeling. So here on the side of the hand, even though. I've got this anxious feeling. I can feel it in my body. I deeply and completely love and accept myself anyway. Even though I've got this anxious feeling in my body, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I have this anxious feeling inside, I accept how I feel anyway. Then where the eyebrow starts, we just do the reminder, this anxious feeling in my body. This anxious feeling. I've got this anxious feeling in my body. I've got this anxious feeling in my body. This anxious feeling. This anxious feeling. Not sure what the outcome will be. I've got this anxious feeling. And then you take a deep breath. And you tune back into it again. And notice what you notice. Has the rating changed? Can you still feel it in your body? Has the color changed? What do you notice? Now, we might just do another round of that. And if it's around the coronavirus and what's going on, I might add some more things, even though I've got some anxious feelings remaining in my body. I deeply and completely love and accept myself anyway, even though I've got these remaining issues in my body. I deeply and completely love and accept myself, even though I'm unsure what's going to happen. Will the numbers increase? Or will we be safe now? I've got this anxious feeling in my body. And I accept how I feel. This feeling in my body. Not knowing how long it will go on for. I've got this anxious feeling in my body. Is it safe to go back? All these people that are about. These worries inside. Not sure if I'm going to be safe. I've got this anxious feeling inside. This anxious feeling. And then we take a deep breath. And just again, tune in, notice what you notice. And it's a good idea to tap as many rounds as it takes to bring that number down to a low 2 or 1 or a 0 before you put in positive affirmations. So you could say, even though I still have some of that anxious feeling inside, I choose to let them go. Even though when I hear about all these people having the coronavirus, I have this anxious feeling inside. I accept myself anyway. And I choose to let that anxious feeling go. Even though when I hear about all these things, it can make me feel anxious. And I choose to let that feeling go. This anxious feeling, I choose to let it go. I choose to know that I'm safe. I've got a roof over my house. I've got food to eat. And all is well. I am safe. I am safe. I am safe. And then you take a deep breath in. Just tune back in. And notice what you notice. Beautiful. So I hope that has helped you and you've noticed that feeling, that calmer feeling right now. I certainly feel very calm right now. Now, some people worry about that in EFT we say the negative over and over again. We say what's going on. We say the truth of what's happening in our body right now and how we feel. And it's interesting because normally we want to push that away. We don't like feeling those feelings. And we have all sorts of mechanisms to not look there. We might work like mad. We might have a drink. We might smoke cigarettes or whatever our mechanism is of not dealing with what we feel. We want to push them down. I was taught very well by my grandmother and my mother, whatever happens, you just soldier on. You don't worry about those things, you just carry on. But those feelings inside, they fester, they held on to in our memory bank, and they come up in the subconscious and put us into a state of unease. So it's really important that we sit with those emotions. And it's called emotional freedom technique because once we talk about it and we really notice feelings want to be heard and they're there for a reason. They let us know when we feel in danger or when we feel unsafe or when we feel sad. And they want us to care for those feelings. And the best way to care about them is for them to be heard. Now, you might have experienced that many of times when you talk to your best friend about how you feel and you let those feelings out, it can make you feel much better already. But if we push them aside, what happens, like I said, someone described it really well. They say when we just shove those feelings down and we just carry on like nothing's wrong, it festers inside like, it's like in a garbage bin. It's like the garbage inside. And often people think with those, when we keep saying those negative things, that that's going to make things worse. And they just say positive affirmations. And they're wonderful. Like Louise Hay was the queen of positive affirmations. And I love her work. And it was interesting, Nick Ortner, who is very famous for his involvement with EFT, he interviewed Louise Hay, who also was into tapping. And he asked her, so what do you think about this, that we tap on the negative? And she said to him, Nick, it's like this. you have to, when you want to clean a house, you need to see the dirt to be able to clean it away. So that's what we're doing. We're making that dirt visible. We say what's really going on. And by doing that, we actually go more into the conscious brain rather than the emotional child brain. And we can think more rationally and respond rather than react in that fight and flight mode. So by saying it aloud, that's why I love EFT so much, because we actually start tuning in. Normally we just, we're not even taking any notice. We don't even notice what goes on in our body with all those feelings. So to tune in what's going on, where do I feel it? How do I know I have that feeling? And really listen to it. And not just listening to it, we say it out loud. And when we hear ourselves say it, it's very powerful. And then when we tap at the same time to bring those cortisol levels down, it can calm the whole system. And that has got a very powerful effect, because when we're in that mode, it not only affects our mental well-being, but also our physical well-being. We all know the physical ramifications of stress that happens when we have stress in our body. So with those positive affirmations, they're fabulous to put in once we got rid of the garbage. Because if we just put positive affirmations in, what that person, how she described it was, it's like spraying deodorant or air freshener on top of the garbage. And yes, it'll smell quite nice for a little while, but after a while that garbage starts stinking again and it'll come up and out. And it's the same with our subconscious. If we don't clear it out, it will fester and it will come up subconsciously again. So we need to clean out the dirt first before we can do the positive affirmations. Because the brain, when we say positive affirmations, but the feeling is still there, the brain won't be able to take it on. And it'll just say, oh, yeah, sure. But I know that it's not like that. So that's what I love about the EFT. And it's not going to make your situation worse. When I do EFT and I have a certain thing that I want to tap on, what I notice after a few rounds, and they say those negative things over and over again, after a while I go, well, no, actually, it's not true anymore. It's not my truth anymore, because it's calmed down and it's actually gone. So it's a really wonderful tool. Now, you might also feel overwhelmed at the moment. I don't know if you're a parent and you've got kids at home, or you had kids at home and the house was all full with all those different jobs that we have to do. So you can also tap on overwhelm, even though there is so much going on. And I'm pulled in all directions. I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though with working at home, with kids in the house, with the partner there, and everything else that's going on, my worries, I've got this overwhelm. It's too much. And even though I can feel this inside, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. So much going on right now, and I feel overwhelmed. I've got this feeling of overwhelm right now. I feel it's getting too much. I've got this feeling of overwhelm. Everyone wants a piece of me. I've got this feeling of overwhelm. I feel so overwhelmed right now. And I choose to let that overwhelm go. I choose to bring calmness inside. I choose to take a breath. A deep breath. And I choose to take one step at a time. I choose to let that overwhelm go. And I do the best I can. One step at a time. I choose to let that overwhelm go. I choose to bring in calm. And I choose to know that I do the best I can. And take a big breath in. Beautiful. Well, I hope that helped and inspired you to maybe find out more about the EFT. Now I'm just having a look with what's happening. Now somebody said, oh, hang on, let me just see if I can see the chats. If you've got any questions, put them in here. So I've got Leah who says, thank you, really enjoying, really resonates, really beneficial. And also, thank you so much, Christine. Today has really resonated with me, as I have been short of breath as well recently and feel so much better now. Meeting you today has come at a perfect timing. We also had a few people watching, which is great. Fantastic. So good to see you here. Now, if you have any questions, now often, like I said, I often think of questions after the event. I invite you to email me, and I'm just trying to find the right thing to share it with you. Here we go. You can email any questions that you have to this email address, because I'd love to hear from you. Like I said, I like helping people to get this beautiful tool that we have at our fingertips, and we can use it anywhere, wherever we are, in whatever situation. And I'd be more than happy to put you in the right direction if you want more scientific information and hear about the research that's been done about it. I can also let you know where to find that. So I hope you've been finding that helpful. And I thank you very much for being here with me today. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.